All right. Good evening. Happy Monday to everyone. If you're watching this live, happy Monday. I'm so excited to be here this evening with those of you who are able to join us live. And if you're watching this on a replay, please be sure to drop in the comments that you're watching on the replay so we know who gets to enjoy this great conversation later on. My name is Marcy Thomas, and I am the founder of Brown Girl Collective and the BGC Book Club, which is about a year and a half old now. And I've been fortunate and very blessed in the last year and a half to be able to talk to a lot of great authors and meet a lot of wonderful readers from across the country and even around the world. So if you're joining us, please drop where you're joining us from in the comments just so we can know where everybody is from. I am actually on the outskirts of Atlanta, so I'm in the big ATL currently, originally from Cleveland, Ohio. So if you're from Ohio, that would be great to know that as well. And the author this evening, we share Detroit in common. So I've been one of those people who's been kind of everywhere. So it's nice to know where you're joining us from. So without much further delay, I'm going to go ahead and get started and introduce our book and author for the evening. The book is Black Girls Must Die Exhausted by Jayne Allen, a really great book, which is the first of 3. So I can't wait to talk about this one and share more with what's coming further down the road. So Jayne Allen is the pen name of Janique Seeley, a novelist, entrepreneur, attorney, and engineer. An avid traveler, she speaks 3 languages and has visited 5 continents. Drawing from her unique experiences as an attorney and entrepreneur, she crafts transcultural stories that touch upon contemporary women's issues such as workplace, place and career dynamics, race, fertility, modern relationships, and mental health awareness. In addition to her series, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, which she calls Chocolate Chick Lit with a Conscience, Jayne has authored 4 nonfiction books. She's also the founder of Book Genius, a full-service online book marketing and author branding course, which will be coming for next year. In her life outside of writing and working a lot, like it sounds, she dabbles in stand-up comedy, tries to learn at least one new thing a week, which I think is awesome, and relishes laughter and champagne bubbles with her girlfriends and family. As I mentioned earlier, she is a native of Detroit, currently a resident of LA, and a graduate of Duke University Pratt School of Engineering and Harvard Law School. So without any further delay, gonna bring on this wonderful, accomplished woman, Ms. Jayne Allen. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. I see we've got Melanie joining us from Seattle, so she's on your side of the
Okay,
country.
Pacific time.
Yes, and Lynn joining us from Durham on my side of the country. So welcome once again.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And hello to the folks joining us from all over the country. That's so
all over the country.
exciting.
Yes. So
Got a little party going.
Yes, absolutely. Cross country party, and maybe from outside of the country as well. You never know. But first of all, I just want to congratulate you on your success with the new book. You've been getting a lot of buzz and a lot of great things going on with it. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a long journey and definitely supported by readers and the community for this book. So I feel like it's a collective win because it's like it's been a whole group of people, trudging up this hill, but it's been very cool.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned to you earlier, one of the things I found interesting is that the book was originally self-published.
Yes, it was. So it was, the traditional media industries, and I come from the music industry, which I knew this in that space, and I was there before a lot of the independent artists started to show up and kind of change the complexion of the music industry. In publishing, it's very traditional in the traditional spaces, and you don't see a lot of Black female protagonists like Tabitha in Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, and you don't see a lot of stories that really highlight the human experience of these characters. And so when I went to traditional publishing the first time, I got feedback not about the story or my writing, which I thought I was going to get. I thought we were going to be like, oh, you don't know how to write.
Never
But that's
that.
not what they said. They said they didn't like the protagonist or didn't
Hmm.
connect to the story. And I thought that's strange. That's weird because I wouldn't say that about Tabby and the people that have had read the manuscript that I knew, who were pretty frank and candid with their feedback. They didn't say that either. So I thought, okay, you know what? I think they're projecting on behalf of who they think readers are. And I
Hmm.
think differently. I think that Tabitha is a relatable character. I think that Black women, Black men will read this book. I also think that non-Black women and Black men will read this book
Hmm.
and enjoy it. And I think that conversations can be had, in all kinds of settings and in groups about this. And so I just didn't believe that. And I wanted readers to have the last word. So that was how this journey started. I just decided I was going to do the best that I could and put it out on my own, use my resources, and then let the reader community take over. And they definitely did. So that's why, this journey is, I feel like it's, there's a lot of people to celebrate with, which is kind of cool.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because as I mentioned before, I had in the book club, I had mentioned it last year actually.
Yeah.
And then this year, I'm like, oh, okay, and it's really
Yes.
great to see that, to give you the opportunity to reach a wider audience,
Yes.
because I do
Yes.
feel that the story is really relevant. The things that Tabby and her girlfriends are talking about. We'll get into some of that. Just to let you know, we never do spoilers here. So,
Okay, good. Yeah, no spoilers.
yeah, no spoilers.
Spoiler light. Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. So, we'll give you some things to encourage you to read, but we don't do spoilers. But it's just there's so many things within the book, and it's such a powerful story, and it is relevant, and it speaks to the things that women go through, because and the main characters are in their 30s. I'm in my 50s actually, but I could still relate to a lot of what they were talking about, even in my own journey. So I thought that was powerful.
Thank you.
So, without any further delay, for those who may not have had a chance to read it, would you mind sharing just a little piece so that we can get an idea of what the story is all about?
Sure. A summary, or do you want me to read a little bit?
Whichever works better for you.
Okay. Well, I'll give some background,
Yes.
and then maybe I can read a portion that's a non-spoiler.
Right.
So the Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, it really is a story that stars a 33-year-old woman, Tabby Walker, and she is Black. She's a Black woman. She lives in Los Angeles, and she's been living her life according to a checklist, which was working out just fine until the story starts and we meet her in the first chapter, and that's where it all starts going wrong. And she gets an unexpected fertility diagnosis, and for her that's a big deal because what she felt like she could put on the back burner with respect to her like checklist life was family. She's like, oh, I can do that, and she has a boyfriend that she thinks can be a partner for her, and all of a sudden this starts to unravel all the things that she felt like were sewn up, and she has to really do an investigation of her life. And in this process,
Mhm.
she realizes that the word she's been living is exhausted in so many ways. And I think that is true for a lot of us, where we don't even have the wake up call that she might have.
Right.
But she has the great fortune of having this wake up call, realizing the word she is living is exhausted, knowing that that's not what she wants for herself. And so the story is her journey of going after fulfillment and having to figure out what that is, and
Mhm.
examining her past, her family, uh, and she's supported with the relationships of her friends, which will feel kind of familiar, I think, to a lot of sister
Mhm.
girls. That she has her sister girlfriends, and she also has her grandmother, who
Mhm.
happens to be a white woman. She's in her 80s, and then her grandmother's best friend, who's in her 90s. But she has this benefit of generational wisdom, which I think is very common culturally within
Mhm.
Black families. And although her grandmother happens to be white,
Right.
But it's a common thing to have that intergenerational interaction. So I really wanted to use Tabby to kind of celebrate the experience of Black womanhood, and to show what it's like, to show the, the things that happen that are slights, that are weights and pressures, but really also to celebrate the things that keep us standing, and how we manage through and are still joyous and hilarious and great friends and partners, and all of these things that we wind up being, that we really don't even think that how much it was in spite of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what this book is about, and it's ultimately, hopefully for people that read it, a call to think past survival and
Mm-hmm.
survival mode that I think a lot of us find ourselves in, and start thinking, what does thriving look like for me? And go on Tabby's journey with her as she starts that investigation. So that's in brief kind of what the book is about. It's a summary of it. It kind of reads, I wanted it to read a little bit like you would be watching reality television. I
Yes.
wanted to feel a little bit like that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that a lot in contemporary fiction, where that kind of pacing and that unexpected humanness. I wanted to bring that flavor into fiction. So that's kind of my style of writing, where I would want a reader to pick this book up instead of maybe watching or want to read this
Right.
in favor of a good reality program, because I'm a reality TV watcher. So that was what I felt like. I was like, I need a book that's going to pull me away from the television. So
Oh,
that was what I
absolutely.
decided to write.
And
um
that it absolutely did that.
Thank you. Well, that's good to hear. I'm like, that's a hard thing to, once you get stuck in a lot of those storylines. So I was like, well, I've got to try to give people something that's going to stand up against some hours of very compelling television. So,
Absolutely.
um, so that's what and I'm going to read a little, because it's hard to not read a spoiler. So I'm going to read something that was really interesting for me to write in this novel. And like I said, Tabby, she is a 30-year-old Black woman. Her grandmother's white, and they're very close.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to do was examine the experience of race,
Right.
and ask questions that didn't don't normally get asked, and of ourselves or others. And so in this part that I'm going to read is Tabby and her grandmother never had this kind of conversation before, but they ask each other, what has your experience been? What has it felt like to be the race that society has assigned you?
Right.
And they start from this place of curiosity and love, and this intimate space, and have this conversation that we just don't have. So when I was writing it, at first I was like, oh my gosh, can I do this? And I hope people don't think that this is like on behalf of all white people or all
Right.
Black people.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I took the pressure. I managed to take the pressure off. This is just these two characters. And I told myself, this is my first time writing a novel. So I was like, I felt a lot of pressure, but I reminded myself that all I could do is just reflect this perspective from just these two particular people. So, and hopefully it sparks the question and conversation between other people in real life. And
Right.
I'm so curious to hear how that could happen or could go. So I'm going to read that. And it starts out with Tabby asking her grandmother, what does it feel to be white? And the book is written in first person. So, uh, Granny Tab, can I ask you a silly question? I asked, even though I already knew I could ask my grandmother anything. But this time, what I wanted to know felt foreign as a thought, and strange coming from my lips. What does it feel like to be white? My grandmother absorbed my words, took a deep breath, took off her glasses, and squinted just a bit, which told me she was thinking. Hmm, I've asked myself the same question on occasion when I was reminded of it, most of the time by cruel people, when I was with my son. Your father, she said quickly, touching my knee. I look at him sometimes and look at me and wonder how we could live in a world that treated the two of us so differently. When he came from my own body, my skin color changed in the sun too, just like him, like yours, just not as dark. But believe me, I tried, she said with a smile, running her pale fingers soothingly across my golden brown arm. I try to think Was white a hair texture, a state of mind? I could never put my finger on it. Maybe it was just what we were told it was supposed to be, because I've never felt white. My grandmother shook her head softly before continuing. So, the best I can tell you is that as I've experienced it, it's more of a what it's not than a what it is. I mean, I get reminded of being a woman all the time, but being white? She brought her hand to her face and gently rubbed her cheek. Sometimes when there's no friction, no reminder of what you can't do, it feels like a hole that needs to be filled with something so desperately. Filled so that there is a something. Your dad, then you, my grandchildren, you have been my greatest something. And I don't know that there is any more than that. We sat still for a moment after that, both of us contemplating her words. It was some time before she spoke again. I never thought to ask it of anyone, not even your dad, whose whole life I watched. Yours too. I guess I thought I understood from observation. And it never occurred to me how silly that might be not to ask until just now. I reckon I should ask you too. What's it feel like to be black? Do you consider yourself black? I laughed a bit in answering. I don't think I have much of a choice, Granny Tab, I said with a smile. To consider myself black or not black, I mean, society just looks at me and sees a black woman, no matter what I have to say about it. I suppose you're right too, Granny Tab said pensively. How does it feel? I continued, trying to think and still talk. I suppose I'd never considered the question before, not while living it. I can tell you that your thought about it being exhausting, that sounds about right sometimes. A lot of the times it does feel exhausting because everything bad in society is about you, but when it comes to the good, nothing is for you. I feel like I'm not enough and too much all at the same time. And then other times, being black feels exhilarating because every good thing that happens feels like a victory, even the small things, because you're constantly reminded that you're an other. So you know whatever good happened in spite of. So there's celebration, there's joy. I paused just to think. It felt so complicated. I pushed myself to find more in the deeper parts, hidden in the folds of my spirit, the secrets. And emptiness is there too, a different kind from what you described, though. A need for validation, maybe to be seen, approved of, to matter as an individual, not just a monolith, and a desire to know that if I do follow all the rules, that I get the promise on the other side, just like anyone else. And by anyone else, I mean anyone else who is white.
All
So
right.
that's a hopefully non-spoiler selection.
Yes, it is. It is. And I really appreciate you sharing that because that is, a definitely a unique perspective to be able to, share in the book by you having these two women that are related by blood, but yet
Yes.
they show up differently in the world. So thank you for sharing that because it is true that her grandmother, who she shares a name with, the lead
Yes.
character, Tabitha, they share a name, they share a name. And oftentimes, in the story, people are like, they're trying to figure out, how does this work?
Right,
They
exactly.
don't
Yeah,
know.
they have the same name. I know that people are probably like Granny Tabitha. Yeah, so her Tabitha's named after her grandmother, Tabitha.
Mhm,
So yeah.
mhm. So, it was just great to see that sometimes that, there are these things that are the same, but then things that are different. So,
Right.
it was great to have them be able to share that conversation because the reality of it is that a lot of times in our families or, in our communities amongst our friends, we don't ask those sorts of questions. So I thought that it was, a powerful conversation for the two of them to have. But
Thank you.
one of the things there's so much in this book. So it's like,
There's a
okay,
lot
which
in
things
there.
do we talk about? Because there's so much.
So much. So much.
So much. Well, one of the things about that really stood out to me, of course, we know that the story starts out, and you've already mentioned it, so no spoilers, that Tabitha finds out that she is having some fertility issues.
Hmm.
So, that brought up just the fact that it's something that there are a lot of women who may struggle with that, that
Yeah.
it's not always this thing where when you want it to happen, it's just automatically going to happen. That's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also true that, Tabitha was like a lot of young women do. They, especially in this day and age, they go and they start their careers and you're climbing the ladder and you're doing all these things. But it's like, then you realize, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't find out. I mean, she was fortunate that she was able to find out and begin to make different, figure out what to do. Sometimes that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So what was that? What was that as a particular point for a character in the book? What made it important for you to have a character going through that challenge?
Well, I thought it was really important to show this in fiction and to kind of normalize the topic. And as a woman, in contemporary society, and especially as a Black woman, we do not talk about these things. And I think we thankfully are at this space where we have all the options. If you want to have a family, if you decide you do not want to, all of those things, but all of that's on the table and could be and should be on the table to discuss. But if we're not talking about reproductive health one way or another, there's this whole swath of options that gets taken right off the table. And for me, I'm 43. And when I was in my 30s, there was so much that I needed to know that nobody was talking about. And when I went to look for resources, whether it was nonfiction or fiction, I mean, maybe a half a dozen books. Just not that much. And fiction, nothing. I mean, I didn't see that. I was like, there was nothing about, reproductive health really, and that I found, or, that journey and what it would be like. I wound up freezing my eggs in my 30s. And, it's something that it's really a journey of information and time. And if I had known what I know now when I was 28, 29, 30,
Right.
I would have been so empowered. I mean, even just deciding about an employer, on the basis of, do they have fertility coverage? I had an amazing conversation over the weekend with a friend. She was telling me that her friend took a job at a tech company specifically because they have fertility coverage and it would allow her to freeze her eggs. And I'm like, the fact that women know that now and are talking about it and realize that, and it's you can make those kinds of decisions that have real economic impact for you and your options in the future. I mean, that's great, so, but I didn't really have that. And I wish I did. So I was like, okay, this is the book that I wish somebody handed to me, when I was 28 or 29 or 30. It's like, girl, you're going to need the, these are things, it's just things you need to know. And so that was one of the big things that I feel like was sort of a black box and just not talked about, kind of whispered about, and people dealing with so many reproductive health issues that affect Black women that we don't talk about. We don't bring them into community to get support and resources and share information. So I thought if I was going to write a novel, why not, take the opportunity to introduce an important topic that affects so many women. I think that I heard a statistic. I don't know that it's necessarily true, but it sounds about right. Like 50% of people are dealing with some kind of issue in this realm. So I just definitely, and I know so many women that that are and have have had their lives impacted and affected by reproductive health issues. So I wanted to make this part of the story, and bring some awareness and normalization to this particular subject.
Absolutely, because I mean, I learned things because for me, I'm older than you are, and it wasn't. I mean, you would think, okay, just like birth control in general. Am I able to get birth control? That's pretty much the extent of it. Are they going to cover me if I have a baby? What's covered in terms of having a baby and all of that, but not the other pieces of the puzzle. So it never dawned on me that number one, that it was quite as expensive as it is if a person decides to freeze their eggs, but then also the whole thing of insurance, whether it's covered or whether it's not. So that was just, I thought that was really good to bring that up and to talk about that, and why some women may make choices to work in certain places.
Right. I mean, it could come down to that. And if you don't know to ask about that, or that's an option, you have all these choices. And it's like the best thing is to be as informed as possible. Information is power. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, while we're on the subject of work and working,
oh yeah.
another big theme for Tabitha specifically is just being working in a working in a newsroom and
Yes.
being up for promotion and dealing with all of the, I say, the microaggressions and the real aggressions
Right. Exactly.
that
Exactly.
oftentimes women, especially specifically Black women, deal with in the workplace. That was another big thing to see, how that plays out and the reality of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's kind of part of life, and
Mhm.
or what the experience might be. And in a lot of the contemporary fiction that I've read, and I'm such a contemporary fiction person. I like, I call it chick lit. I'm like, okay, but and when you see Black characters, a lot of times, like, oh, maybe they have like they're Black because they have a Black name, or they have,
Mhm.
they're described as crinkly hair or whatever it is. But what is that? But you don't get the layers of what that experience is like. Okay, so maybe you
Right.
have a Black name in a white space. What does
Mhm.
that mean for you? What does that mean about your experience? How does that add or affect your perspective, or just how does that affect your day to day? Or if you have crinkly hair in a white workspace, that means that you decided to go natural in
Mhm.
that environment. That's a journey. That's not just a
Yes.
gloss over. And I feel like these flyover details are the subjects of a whole book. So I was like, there for this particular character, I wanted to make it meaningful that she was experiencing life as a Black woman, and to really highlight what that perspective is and what that experience is, and to unpack that. And it's just not a throwaway thing. There's a real journey for her about, her hair, and how she's treated, and the decisions she has to make in her workspace, and how that affects her day to day, and who she is as a character, and also her journey of evolution. uh
Mhm.
so and what she goes and deals with, how she deals with it, and calls she has to make to her girlfriends, or
Right.
whatever that is.
Right.
So I thought that was all very important.
Mhm.
And so I didn't want to gloss over it, and I wanted to make that be seen and acknowledged. And
Right.
I think a lot of some women that have readers that have given me feedback about this and have talked about, they're just like, I just like seeing something that was relatable, and that I
Absolutely.
didn't feel crazy. Like, it's like, oh, I'm not alone. Like, this is real. Like, I knew I the things that I feel, or I experience in my workplace. It's like, somebody said, I just went through that. Like, when I was reading the books, there's like, that was something I went through yesterday or today.
Right.
So I'm
Exactly.
like, I'm
Exactly.
glad that, that can be something that we get to see reflected in fiction, and
Absolutely.
then go on a journey to see it played out. Because I think that's what makes fiction so important. Sometimes it's like, in life, you need to see the story played out, in a way that's maybe beyond the courage that you have in your life, or maybe beyond where you are right now. But there's so much value in seeing the story played out. So that was what I wanted uh, to give in this book.
Absolutely. And it was good to see, where it started, and then, where we end, because of course, as we
Yeah.
already mentioned, there are multiple books. So where
Yes.
at the end of
Where we
this
wind up in the
particular
first
book,
book.
in the
Exactly.
first book, how
Right.
that all ended up. Well, one of the other things, kind of moving away from work for a second, of course, when Tabby is going through this whole thing of finding out that she can't or may have some challenges with having a child and the relationship that she's in at the
Mhm.
time. See, there was a lot
Yes.
within that as well,
Yes. Yes.
because, a woman who's has been in a relationship with someone for a while and thinking that they might be on the same page, and then maybe they're not.
Right. Maybe they're not. Right. Exactly. It hasn't been tested. So right.
Right, right. And that's very powerful. I could relate to that as well, because sometimes you can be with someone who's kind of along for the ride, so to speak. And
Right, right.
yeah, and the real test comes when things get shaken up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was important to show, especially kind of for a relationship in one's 30s. I mean, there's people who are, have all kinds of versions of this in different ways. Or, there's Alexis, who's Tabitha's friend, who got married very early, and
Hmm.
Layla, who's kind of her other friend, who's just doing life in her way. And Tabby's kind of in the middle with, her significant other, Mark. And Mark was such an interesting character to write because I really did want to try to make him three-dimensional. And he's, got his own complexities, and he shows up and in the story as, it's authentic to him, but it's not necessarily who Tabitha wants or expects him to be. And so we have to unpack who Mark is and why is he showing up in these ways that might be a little bit baffling or disappointing or
Hmm.
whatever it is. And I think that happens a lot for us. And, maybe we don't have an explanation, or we don't have the words or the comfort to get down to the deeper layers of why this person is showing up like this. But he does have his reasons. He does have his complexity. So it was so fun to write Mark and to kind of think through who is this person and why are you like this,
Right.
so
Exactly. Because the reality of it is a lot of times we don't know why a
mhm,
person is, because one of the things I really loved is that even, ups and downs,
mhm,
but that they were able to at a certain point have a conversation. And even though you might not like the way the conversation goes,
right,
in a real world type of personal situation, you may or may not like it, but to be able to actually sit and have that conversation and figure out, be like, oh, okay, so this is what's going on. Because
yeah,
sometimes with the more knowledge that you have, that helps you to make a different decision. Because you might say, well, maybe is that something I want to deal with, or is that something I don't want
right.
to deal with?
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's kind of the gift of fiction, because you can push your characters, in different ways. And I wanted to make these three-dimensional characters that would have the texture of reality, and then, but then put them in scenarios that go a little bit further than where we might go in everyday life, where you might not have been able to have that
Right.
conversation with a Mark because you'd be too mad, so
Right.
it's like you never got
Right.
to see that. So
Right.
now, here's the situation with Tabitha, the character that she is. You get to see this conversation play out that you wouldn't have gotten to see, or you get to learn something about this, personality type or this particular character that, if you encountered something like this in real life, you'd just be like, just, beyond whatever, you
Right.
might have,
Exactly.
or
Yeah.
whatever it is. So that's kind of the fun of the fiction here is, and kind of in the similar vein to the conversation between Tabby and her grandmother, is just finding those spaces that just past, where reality in real life we wouldn't go, we wouldn't be,
Hmm.
and to see what happened on the other side of it. And that was the fun in writing it. Sometimes I'd be so excited for certain scenes just to see what was going to play out. Because in my mind, the characters were so formed that it's kind of
Hmm.
like they had their words. It wasn't like I could force something on them. Like I could only kind of put them in scenarios and then see what was going to play out. So yeah, that I really liked writing that character, and I like hearing from male readers too, um,
Mm.
how they view the scenario. It's great. I would love this. What I haven't seen is like a group of like equal number of men and women, and just have it.
Mm.
I would love to see a conversation like that play out.
Wow. So, I mean, I can kind of guess how some of the women may feel. What's the feedback from some of the men? I'm just curious.
Some of the men, it's been kind of across the board. Some guys are like, oh, I agree with him, or like, or he said his truth, or that was,
Hmm.
and or she's not listening, or
Mm.
or they said, oh, he, oh, I'm, I'm not riding with Mark on that. Some of my
Right.
guy friends have
Right.
been like, no, he's, especially like my more mature guy friends,
Right.
they're like, oh, he's whatever. And so they have their, but it's across the board. It's so interesting to hear. So I would love to hear that play out in a group, in conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that it's good that you did in the way that that particular character was formed, as that you do get to see things from that perspective, because a lot of times, especially in books about women or by women, it's very much woman centric, which your book
Yeah.
is. But to have that male character who's going through some things, and even Tabby's dad, going through some different things, and being able to have conversation. Rob, who is the husband of Alexis, Lexi. Trying to
Mm-hmm.
keep it all straight in my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah. You got it all right. There you go. Exactly.
Some different things that he's going through. So it's just really, I thought that that was really good. But about the characters, when you were talking about the writing of the characters, that brought up something for me. So was this something where you kind of had a storyline and you kind of knew where it was going to go, or was it a situation where the characters began to talk to you and kind of tell you where to go, or how did that play out? Because I hear a lot of different things from the
Yeah.
authors that we talk to.
Well, I really treated this kind of like casting. I was like, I really wanted it. Like I thought about reality television again. Like how would, if I were crafting something like this, how would I cast this? And so I kind of did the character development, thinking as in terms of casting, and what people need to be put in conflict with each other to learn something or see how this is going to play out, and to go on this journey, and to show different sides of Tabby, and to really kind of flesh out this journey. And so the characters, they kind of shaped out from that perspective. And the story, I knew where I wanted it to go more or less, but I wasn't clear on how it would go. And the characters thankfully weren't, people I could just force into, particular situation for my needs.
Mm-hmm,
For
mm-hmm,
where, the story really had to go, in the authentic direction. So sometimes it would surprise me. So yes, the characters did kind of show me, I had to, or I had to figure out, what do I have to throw at this person to get them to go where I want them to go? And for whatever character that is, that would be a lot, more than
mm-hmm.
you would expect to get that. Like, oh, they wouldn't, that wouldn't move them, but this plus this plus this would get them to go there. So that's kind of how that worked in the writing process.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now, I know we spent a lot of time talking about Tabby because she is the main character,
Yes.
but she also has, some strong supporting characters and her two closest friends. One we already mentioned, Alexis, who is married to her, junior high / high school sweetheart, and, things like that. And she has this life that a lot of times women look at from the outside.
Yes, it
And
looks
you think
very
it
lovely.
looks very good from the outside.
Right.
But as Tabby mentioned several times, I think I just know them too well. I think I
Yeah.
just know them too much. It looks
Right.
good to some, but to others, maybe
Yeah.
not
She's like,
so
I
much.
remember. Yeah. She's like, I
Yes, I
remember what
remember
happened
when.
before. Right. Exactly.
Right. So that I really enjoyed that character as well. The things that Alexis was dealing with in her marriage, and just in figuring out who she was as a mom, and all of these things. And she has an evolution of sorts in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. She does, and she has to kind of have this, as Tabby unravels, everybody else starts unraveling,
Mm,
also, and we get to see these different people kind of uh, develop out of who we originally met. So
right,
Alexis is on her own journey that kind of starts in the midst of Tabby's unraveling, and everybody is hiding something. Everybody. And so as those secrets start to come out, and that's the thing about having to push people, like how far do you have to push somebody for the secret to come out?
right.
Because even with friends, like close friends, they don't tell each other everything. Like
That's true.
it's
That's true.
we have our parts that we hide, and everybody has a mask that they wear, and for whatever reason. And so as a writer, I get to okay, well, let me throw some more things out so that it has to come down, and we have to get to the truth. And then once the truth is there, then the journey has to start. And so for Alexis, she's kind of lost herself, and that life, that picture perfect life, for various reasons, just isn't enough, and the truth becomes important, and also the truth of who she is and
Right.
who she wants to be. So she's on that a journey, not the same journey as Tabby, but it starts to be that same,
Mhm.
what fulfillment looks like for an Alexis. And ultimately the same thing for her friend Laila, that
Mhm.
she's got to figure that out for herself too.
Right. Right. Yes, and Laila as well. She is, going through a lot of different changes, and that was one of the things that I definitely found interesting. Is that, as you said, these are close friends, really close friends, by and large, but yet they are keeping secrets. And the reality of it is sometimes that's true, because you look at, my friend loves me, and I know they love me, but if they knew that about me,
Then
would they
maybe they would,
withhold their
right?
love? Would they sit in judgment? Would they go and talk to other friends and tell two friends and tell two friends, about
Yeah,
what's going on? So I mean, that in and of itself is very real as well. Um, and I love the way that, even though these things are going on, and like I said, Laila goes through some things as well, that we're not going to touch on. Gotta
right.
be.
Yeah,
But she goes through
she
some
has
very,
her own unraveling.
yeah,
Yeah,
she has her own unraveling. In some ways, she unravels even more than the others.
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah,
and has to kind of, figure out who she wants to be, and start from scratch, so to speak. So,
yeah,
but I love that, even with all of these things that are going on in each of their individual lives, and there's, there's triumphs, there's trials for each one of them, and even with all of the secrets and everything, they still find a way to come back together as sisters.
yeah, yeah. And as even uh with imperfect friendship, it's still perfect, it's still effective, it's still genuine, it's just imperfect. And I think that was the other one of the things that I wanted to celebrate about friendship, is that I think a lot of the time you think of, or you see friendships reflected as like, everybody's kind of doing more or less the right thing, or being a supporting character in sort of this, you know not regimented, but like within 10 and 2, kind of
Mhm.
way. And I
Mhm.
really wanted it to go off the rails a little bit, but
Right.
still be effective. And to see that, like, how strong those friendships are. They're strong, and celebrating that as amongst Black women, our friendships, for so many reasons, the way that, our lives go, those female friendships are strong. So I
Mhm.
mean, to the point where past imperfection, and so I thought it was important to celebrate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And another thing that comes up in these friendships, actually, they're not the only one that I have a great friendship. The friendship between Miss Gretchen and, I hope I'm saying her name right, Miss
Granny Tab.
Gretchen
Yeah.
and Tabitha One.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
The
Granny
granddaughter.
Tab. Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Exactly.
right. It's like they had this great relationship, friendship as well. And makes me think of the thing of chosen family.
Yes.
Because oftentimes, we have the family that we're born into, and in the best case scenario, they're wonderful people that we love and we get along with, and they walk this, through this journey called life with us, in a
Hmm.
positive way, but that's not always the case. But we have the ability to define what family means.
Yes.
We have the ability to choose the people that we want to be a part of our journey or want to be in our families.
Yes. Yes. And I think the relationship between Granny Tab and Miss Gretchen, it's that, again, just showing a different generation, but that same
Mhm.
sisterhood, and that, again, choice of sister, choice of family, and how strong that bond is as well. And celebrating that, and giving the, generational perspective to Tabitha, which
Mhm.
I thought was really important. Also, the book, and the book title is really about life and putting life
Mhm.
into perspective. And
Mhm.
when you at 33 have the benefit of somebody that's lived so much more life than you, and it's brought into your current um, place of evaluation, and
Mhm.
you get to make so many more decisions and so many more choices at a place where you can really do something about you have so many more, options and choices ahead of you. And so that's like such a gift that Tabby's grandmother, Miss Gretchen, give to Tabby. She can use it as however she decides to, but as a reader we get to go along that journey with her, and maybe take some pieces away from that.
Right. And there were a couple things about that. Number one, to see older female women characters written and to show that they are still living, that
Yes.
they are still vibrant, they're still enjoying themselves, still sensual and sexual, and all these other things.
Doing the most.
Doing the most. Miss Gretchen is doing the
Oh,
most.
doing the most, honey.
Grandma's not as much, but Miss
Yeah.
Gretchen is doing the most.
Miss
But
Gretchen is doing the most. Yeah.
but I mean, but it was good to see that because
Yes.
so many times people think that once you get past a certain age that your life is over and that you can't love, you can't live, you can't do these things that you're bound to be sickly or whatever the case may be. But this is showing that that doesn't have to be the case. So I thought that that was powerful. Also, the fact that the two older characters are very much about live your life, and
Yeah.
they give advice to Tabitha, but not in a way, how do I put it? I felt that it wasn't a way that they were sitting in judgment of her.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that is really important to see, because I also felt like that gives more to the reader. I try to write the book without judgment at all. I mean, there's just a lot of
Mhm.
different perspectives, a lot of different scenarios, and I tried, very hard to write it without judgment and just to portray it and let the reader make their own decisions. And even as Tabitha makes hers, there's enough information there that the reader has the ability to have chosen differently.
Mhm.
It may not, they may not see it play out, but they could have made a different choice than she did. Nobody's making choices for anybody, in the book or for the reader either. And I thought that was an important thing to make this a real substantive kind of journey that you could take.
Absolutely. So thank you. I appreciate the fact that you did that and
Thank you.
having those characters and being able to see because in most of our lives, if we're blessed, if we're fortunate, we do get different perspectives. And it's nice to see those perspectives coming in a way that is positive and not, you know,
Right.
now, Tabitha's mama might have been a little bit more like old school, normal, what you would expect. In some ways, she was more old school than the older ladies were,
Right. Exactly.
in terms of her
Exactly.
perspective.
She's in that window, the age window. Right.
Yeah, she's in that space where she's not as hip as the older ladies
Right.
in
Exactly.
some ways. So
Exactly.
that was just interesting as well. I'm just trying to see. I think I've hit kind of the highlights. So there is one other thing that comes out in the book that is just something that we deal with, and it happens on that actually in the very first blurb, of
Mm.
dealing with as a black person, as a black woman, dealing with police interactions.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that is, to me, that is something that, and every, black person experiences it differently.
Mhm.
And for Tabitha, felt like it was important to show this experience from her perspective,
Mhm.
and just represent it and reflect it the way that I mean, that is how it seemed to play out for her. She's having a bad day, and then here's this moment, and it's not so much, I mean, it is about what happens
Mhm.
and or doesn't happen, but it's also about what is going to happen no matter what happens. And that's the layer of fear and the
Mhm.
stress and the concern, and that's a reality for um black people, that everybody doesn't have to endure and doesn't everybody doesn't have to worry about. But there's real effects to that stress and
Mhm,
that
mhm,
concern, and on a human level and a
mhm,
health level. So when we
mhm.
wonder, she's wondering how was she, stressed, or how could this, these things happen? Well, okay,
Right,
let's unpack
right.
it. Let shall we examine, there's all these things on a day-to-day basis that um are real challenges to, day-to-day life and the experience, especially the societally created experience of Blackness and what that feels like to operate in society in this way.
Mhm,
That create, we, I think we brush a lot of it off. We
mhm,
don't realize the weight that it adds, or the effects that it can have. I mean, there's now scientists are saying that just the experience of being Black in this society has health effects, and it
mhm.
actually does create a health impact. So, that people are just saying that now, but it's been the
Wow,
case, so that
like
just because people
forever.
are just starting to, just because people are just starting to say it, doesn't
Right.
mean that it hasn't been true. So I think it's just important to acknowledge, or have an acknowledgement of that, and to start asking the questions. Okay, well, if this is happening, what are you doing to counteract that? Because
Mhm,
this is, instead of brushing this off, or, well, I'm just taking it in stride. Like, no, there's a weight here. So what's the counterbalance? And so for
mhm.
Tabitha, she's got her friends, her family, and all this stuff, but that's not enough
Right.
because she's having these, effects. So that's something too for the reader to go along with also, and hopefully start to ask those questions, and hopefully feel seen, and at the same time, um, do the ask the important questions. And, well, wait a minute, if this is happening,
Mhm.
what is my self-care looking like? These,
Right,
so,
right, right, right. Because just in all of that and the things that actually all of the characters are going through, excuse me, it lends itself to the title, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. I mean, it
yeah,
really does, because just if you think of all the things, whether it's, your personal, very personal things that you're dealing with, your relationships, your friendships, things with your family, things at your job, dealing with society, all of these things that we deal with that can make you exhausted.
yeah, I mean, if you look at your whole, right, if you're living, especially if you're living your life unintentionally.
Right.
So, one of the things that I felt like was really important to do with this story was change the meaning of that,
Mm-hmm.
and especially giving some, perspective from, okay, intentional living. And I think it's a cultural thing where we take, what might be negative, and we make
Mm-hmm.
it positive, we make it
Right.
great.
Right.
And so I really wanted to take that word exhausted, that exhaustion, that concept that I hear reflected so much as part of the experience from a lot of Black women, and turn it into something that had to do with thriving. So that if
Right.
you've read the book, you hear exhausted, it means something. It's a reminder to you, at the end of it, of something completely different about life and living more
Right.
fully, and
Right.
living with intention. So
Right. And as
that
I
that's
call
also
it,
important.
dying empty.
Yeah, exactly. Dying empty. Right. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Don't live with where your music plays out fully. Live
Right,
fully.
exactly, exactly. So, well, I thank you so much for joining us this evening. And, for Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. And I
Thank
must
you.
tell you, Jayne, I was super excited earlier today when I got an email from your team
Oh yes, yes,
telling
yes,
me that for part two,
yes.
book two is going to be, oh, you got it there. Black Girls Must Be Magic. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Right. I'm
Well,
so excited for that. I love that. I love that. We
yes.
we did a I have this here. We did the little like reader event where we painted the
Uh-huh.
cover of the
Oh
first book.
wow,
So
that's
I
beautiful.
know this is like my version of it was so fun. So I'm like, I can't wait to do a version of this cover.
Yes.
So I'm
So
like, this is
yes, for those
there's a
who have
theme here.
read or haven't read this one yet, you've got some
Yes.
time. The next book, Black Girls Must Be Magic, is coming out on February the 1st.
Yes,
So
the
I was
journey
excited when I got that
continues.
email today because I was like, oh, yes, right on time. 'Cause I'm talking to her
Yes,
tonight. Yeah.
yes, I'm
And they
so
told me my
excited.
copy is in the mail, so I'm excited.
Yes, yes, there'll be. I know. Oh my god, I'm super excited for you to get it. Yeah, the journey continues. So
Yeah, so
book two
I'm
is on the way.
excited to. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see the continuation of this story and to learn more of what happens with these characters. So, I know that the second book is already written.
Yes,
That part I do know. So, what about the third book? Is it going to be like later next year, or do we
the
have to
third
wait
book
a
is
while?
next year. Yeah,
Okay,
it's
okay.
the I think it's scheduled for fourth quarter of next year.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So we will have the full trilogy by
Yes.
the end of
In
next
the 20,
year.
yes. And then
By
we
the
have
end
another standalone book forthcoming after
Oh
that.
wow, okay. So that's good to know. 'Cause one thing, once you get going, I know writers are always writing. From when I talk to everyone that I talk to, what you might be promoting this one, but you're already, two,
You're
three,
writing the
four
next one.
things,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
down the line. So,
Yeah.
and I didn't share this earlier, but I'll pull it up now since we're almost done. Cosette has actually already read the second book, so she's looking forward to the third.
Oh, thank
So
you, Kazette.
yeah, so you're gonna have to wait a little while, Miss Pointer, but it's coming.
I love that. I
It's
love
a
that.
chance to go back and revisit the others and get ready. So I already told your team I'll be ready to talk to you in early part of next year about the next book.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
that will be a great experience. So I just want to thank you so much again for your time, Jane,
Well,
for
thank you
coming
for
on.
having me. This has
Oh
been
yeah,
a great
absolutely.
conversation. I'm glad to talk about
Absolutely. And we
all
did good because
the
we didn't
unpacked
spoil
book.
it. We didn't spoil it.
No, no, we did, yeah, no spoilers. I think
Mm-mm.
people will be just fine.
Right. Just enough.
Nobody's
Just
gonna be mad. Nobody's gonna be mad.
right, right, right. Be like, she told the whole book. Like, no, I never do
No, no.
that. But I always like to have authors come on and just introduce and talk to you and find out a little bit more about you and your journey and what drew you to write and what you've got going on. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you
And
for
so,
having me.
oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Going, you still have some California sun, right?
Probably not quite. I mean, it's if there's sun now at this time, it's like a little sliver. I
Okay.
feel like, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
it's okay. It's still early here. So,
Right, right. And see, it's 9 o'clock my time. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
So,
before I
enjoy the
go,
rest of your evening.
yes, yes. Just before I do go, I want to let everybody know in 2 weeks we will have another author on. Put that up here or save the date for The Girl at the Back of the Bus
Oh,
by
okay.
Suzette D. Harrison. Trying to get that where the light is right. There we go. We will be talking to Suzette Harrison in a couple of weeks about her book, The Girl at the Back of the Bus, on November 1st at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. So I look forward to seeing you all again. And Jane, I look forward to talking to you next year.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to be back. I'll have to change out the backdrop. Where is it
Yeah,
on this
yeah,
slide?
it'll be a new one. It'll be a new one. So we
I
look
know.
forward to that and everything that is yet to come for you. So once again, congratulations on your
Thank you
success. We
so
wish you
much.
well, and we'll talk soon. Everybody have a good evening.
Good
Bye
night.
bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.